What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 13 of the CineD Focus Check podcast.
Nino, how are you?
I'm good.
I'm also good. Thank you for asking. I'm joking. Nino, what did you do in the weekend? Well, I was...
Well, you were probably lazy, you know.
Okay.
You were like laying low. I spent the weekend in the studio.
Doing what exactly?
Not video stuff. I just thought it's time for a CineD song. So I produced a song.
You produced a CineD song?
Yeah.
I'm very curious. Come on, let me hear.
Yeah, it's good, huh?
It's horrible. Who made it? What's going on here? Are we moving into producing songs?
So a friend of mine pointed me to AI, of course, again. Like there's probably a lot of services like that. But there's a service called Udio, which you can see here. And it took me 5 minutes to make this. So I literally just put a prompt. Maybe we can play in the background and I just put a prompt and it said a song about CineD. I wrote CineD like that because otherwise, you know, we know the problem. People just say signed or whatever. But if you write it like this, it will pronounce it correctly. So a song about CineD, the best filmmaking technology platform in the world, pop, indie, that's it. And then it generated similar to Midjourney or Dolly, these image generators. It even generated the text. So I did not write one word about this. So,
well, joke aside,
it comes up with various versions. It always gives you like 30-second snippets. And then you can just decide which one you want to continue with. And then you can I think you can remix it. So it kind of redoes it, I think. Or you can extend it. So you can always add about 30 seconds. And you can also make it add an intro and an outro. And I think we're going to put the full song in the show notes. I'll upload it to SoundCloud. Maybe we can embed it in the article for this podcast. So it's insane.
But this is not a ego trip. This is actually a sign of something. What does it mean for creators like us?
It's crazy. Of course, there's the same topic we've had many times before. You don't know what these things were trained on. You don't know. It's probably been trained on everything it could find on the internet in terms of audio. So I'm sure like everything is in there. So there's always a question of royalties, a question of, is this legit? Are you able to use this? It's problematic, hugely problematic, of course, for musicians, because there are things on there, you know, like you can just write, I want a song about this and that, and the singer should sound like Freddie Mercury. And it actually sounds like him. Or the Beatles or whatever. And you don't actually find, like you put those names, I'm sure because of copyrights, they don't actually show you the names in the titles, but so they would write Beatles in a different way. And then you can still find a song that sounds like the Beatles, but it's not the Beatles. And it's crazy because it's every genre is possible. You can also feed it lyrics. So you can just, if you have lyrics, you can just feed it the lyrics and then it will make a song around those lyrics. It's insane.
Okay, so that actually shows that, again, we are facing a dilemma here. On one hand, if you are an independent producer or even a production company and your client is asking for a song, a theme, theoretically, there is a very easy way, cheap way to do this. But then, of course, we have the dilemma, should we or not?
I did not at all. I mean, literally just scrape the surface of this and spend 10 minutes on this. But as far as I know, you cannot define like the beats and all those things that you would need in order for it to create exactly what you need for a film. So it's not like you can say I need all the specifics of a song that you were looking for. So I think it's not easy to get what you want for to create something as a soundtrack for your movie. However, of course, you can also tell it like, I want something that sounds like Philip Glass, and then it's like this whatever, and then it will make something, and then if you go often enough, it probably comes up with something. And I'm sure it's very hard to actually, like if somebody uses this on their movie or whatever, it will be very hard for people to know that it was generated with software like that. And we know that, music producers, especially in the pop field, they are using tools like that on a more basic level for beats and stuff all the time. But this just goes, it's the full thing.
Simply generate the whole thing.
And actually, it's something that because it has been a topic last week, and we should talk about it because we talk about that. Scarlett Johansson's voice, right? Last episode we tried ChatGPT 4.0, which is their new version, which is like you can interact with it and gives you a voice. Very, very spooky how this went. So apparently, OpenAI, Sam Altman personally reached out to Scarlett Johansson while they were developing it, if she would be willing to give her voice for that, and after long consideration, she said no. And that's of course because she was the voice in the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where he falls in love with this AI voice, basically. And so they kind of wanted to recreate that. And on top of that, he even tweeted just the word, like Sam Altman tweeted the word her without context. So of course everybody was like, okay, it's coming. But she denied. And then they released it last week or 2 weeks ago.
And surprisingly,
the main voice sounds
very similar. Huh?
Very similar to her. And of course, obviously she...
Two letters from the lawyer. And
she talked about it, I think, during the Cannes Film Festival or something. It's crazy. It's just showing how these companies do not care about...
No respect.
They do not care about royalties and all those things. And people have accused us before about being AI propagandists, which I completely deny and find ridiculous, because it's something that we need to be aware of, like what's happening. We need to know, as filmmakers, as creators, we need to be aware of what's happening, because just because you're denying what's happening,
it doesn't mean it will not happen.
Exactly. It will not, like your opinion will not matter if it will proceed or not. So it's better to be informed about what's happening. And just because we are showing these tools does not mean that we encourage using them on every creative production and replacing actual creativity by humans. But you should be aware of what's possible. And a lot of AI things that are happening are very much creative, and I can support your creativity. But whenever there is something that is kind of, like really... using somebody else's work or creations and not kind of giving them the royalties or respect that they deserve for making it, and just training models, of course, that is hugely problematic. And it's a field that our entire world, not just the cultural industry, but everybody, like this is something will be the biggest problem of the next couple of years.
Let's hope we're not going to lose control. As long as those companies who are developing those tools are not clearly marking that was made with AI, that's where the problem is. And I hope that the regulators, I don't know how much we trust those, but in general, they should be really hard on those companies and literally force them, first of all, to be very open about how the model was trained, and second, even more importantly, to have a certain label that it's very clear to everybody that was made with AI. But anyway,
I think one thing that people are not aware of, how much, and we all not aware of probably, how much content on the internet in general is already AI generated, and there is this discussion in the community there. At some point, the snake will bite its own tail, because the AI is training on all the text on the internet. And once a lot of the new text is actually generated by AI, then the AI will train on text that another AI generated, and then the quality will go down, because we see this already with ChatGPT in some cases where people are saying, who are using it a lot, that it's dropping in quality, it's suffering from it. So it's kind of like they need to, like it needs to be tagged, like it needs to be clear that something was generated by AI. And yeah,
I think it's fair to say that we are very proud to be very open and say that we do not use any AI for our site. Our guys are sitting, are writing, are checking, trying to be as accurate as possible. It's and by the way, I think also Google is really punishing you now severely if they find out that you're using AI for writing text. I think your ranking will go down. So
yeah, we try to avoid that as much as we can. We have used it for some featured images where we clearly mark them.
I'm talking about text.
Yeah. But that's really, like a handful of cases where like we talk about an abstract topic and couldn't find a stock image that fits or whatever. But other than that, we never ever use it for text.
Yeah.
And we also, do not encourage anybody to use that for any editorial content, because it will affect.
It will bite.
It will bite you back. Yeah. Okay.
But I have to say, it's not that I was really lazy during this weekend when you were composing.
I spent 5 minutes on this. So I was lazy.
I actually spent the whole Friday night and the next morning on Saturday filming a new review, a fresh review. And this time it's the FUJIFILM X-T50.
Which we talked about last week.
That's right. And
it was announced last week, right?
It was announced last week, next to other things from Fujifilm, the GFX 100S2, a new 16 to 50 millimeter lens, and there was the 500 millimeter GF lens. So they came up with many things, but I chose to review the new X-T50. For me, that was the next to the lens. So just this review is in the making. It will be published next week. And what actually I'm concentrating on with these reviews, actually three fundamental things. One is the camera itself, the X-T50. The second thing is the new lens, the XF 16 to 50 millimeter. They call it the kit lens, but I really want to check how good this lens is. I mean, don't forget, the new camera has a 40 megapixel sensor, and that means that the lens has to resolve this type of resolution. So
is it f2.8 or? It
starts in f2.8, but the minute you move it a little bit, the focal length a bit more in, it's already changing. So, but it's all about size and weight and so on. And this lens, unlike its predecessor, doesn't have OIS. But it's good. With testing it, we will come up with more.
What's your first impressions compared to the X-T5, which is the same guts, right?
I really love this camera. For me personally, the smaller is better. I'm working a lot with the XS20, which I love a lot, and it has its own benefit, like open gate and maybe higher data rate. But on the other hand, if you are a stills photographer, this is still a 26 megapixels sensor, unlike the new camera. In many ways, you can compare it to the X100VI. It looks like the processor and the sensor are the same from the newer generation. But I will touch this in the review. And the other thing that I'm touching in the review is the Reala Ace film simulation. And that's the first time that I'm really working with the Reala Ace. And not F-Log 2. So, and I also decided really not to color correct anything. What I see is what I get, and what you will see in the review is what I got, meaning it is what it is. I just want to see how good this film simulation is for work. Up until now, if we wanted to work with a baked color, it was always the Eterna. And now more and more Fujifilm cameras do have this Reala Ace, so it was about time to check, and I'm coming up with a very solid conclusion about it that will be also in the review itself.
Let's touch on the Fujifilm film simulations for a second. We put up an article which is basically referring to a website that Fujifilm put up where they actually explain all the differences in their new film simulations and existing ones. So what do you make of this in general? Like, why is this becoming so popular to have those film simulations?
There's something very emotional about those film simulations. I think by now, there are 20 or even more film simulations. I think so many people can really find the look they're after.
And they're really recreating actual Fujifilm film stock from ages ago, sometimes, in their digital cameras, right?
That's one thing. And the other thing is there's a whole community out there that actually, based on those simulations, film simulations, are even making adjustments to create other film simulations which are not even Fujifilm. So yeah, there's a lot behind it. It's very, as I said, it's very emotional. I think some of them are really, really nice. I will personally not work with some because it's less appealing for me. But I think everybody can find what they want. I mean, we can see on the screen some of those, they divide them into two nice groups. One is all-around types. The other one is individualistic types. I really encourage you guys to simply read the article, especially if you're a Fujifilm user. You might find it interesting. And if you're not, just for overall knowledge and see how other companies are doing it, because other companies might call something similar picture profiles, but here it's not really a profile. This is more like a simulation of existing stock.
Are those film simulations available in all Fujifilm cameras?
No. Most of them have most of those, but for example, the Reala Ace is in all the current cameras from this year, but there are still some other cameras, popular cameras, that are still waiting for the simulations. And I really hope that Fujifilm will update with a firmware update. Hopefully you can get those simulations.
While we're already talking about Fujifilm, we also released a very nice review that you did about the very popular X100VI. Yeah, I mean, it's a 26-minute video, little documentary that you shot. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this. And then you have a talk with Florian about the camera, who's also a Fujifilm user.
Yeah.
So what makes this camera special? I mean, it's something that when it came out, we were just surprised. I think it's fair to say, like how popular and how many people would actually pre-order that camera just based on specs.
Yeah, actually, well, it's not really based on specs because this is the 6th generation, and also other generations were very popular, especially the 5. The only thing, we were surprised about the pre-orders, and now I'm actually very surprised to see how slowly those pre-orders are being fulfilled. We can see in the backhand of B&H, this is one of our site sponsors. You can see what is being pre-ordered, and you can see what is being fulfilled and what not. And still, there are quite a lot of. Yeah, the camera is not being.
They can't make enough of them.
Probably. So, I teamed up with Florian, our colleague, to talk a little bit more because I took kind of care of the video side, and because it's a very popular camera, I asked him to kindly run with the camera. He likes taking photos. He's very good in this, and I asked him to work with the camera and see what it means for him to take photos with that camera. I think the common knowledge that we both came up with is, first of all, working with a 23mm lens, and this camera has a fixed lens, which, of course, if you're using video in a high quality mode, it will kind of reduce the focal length. Then it's about almost 30mm. You should all know this. But otherwise, if it's with a 23mm fixed lens, you really have to think about your composition. And that's why it's a very nice tool for those who are actually starting to film, or really, you learn with your feet. Because sometimes we are becoming lazy with zoom lenses. You just zoom in order to make a composition. Here, there is no zooming in. You really need to either get closer to your subject or stay far away. So this is one thing that I really like about the camera. The other thing, because we actually got so many emails. Originally, we were not even planning to review the camera, but with this huge amount of pre-orders, plus the emails that we got about will we review it. And also, many people asked, is that a professional tool when it comes to video? And every time we've been asked this, we will say in a very clear way, a professional tool for us is a tool that you can make money with. That's it. If you can make money with it, it's professional. So,
well, it's also fair enough, like even all of us also, I mean, a lot of us became filmmakers or photographers out of passion. So I think it's good to, even in your spare time, like take pictures, make films, just to keep the creative juices flowing, because it's almost like no pressure, right? You can, with a lot of people do this with their phones now. And of course, because of the phone's capabilities, a lot of people, like I would say, not filmmakers or photographers, but a lot of average consumers, prosumers, maybe even replace their professional like spare time camera with a phone.
Yeah, and we also touched this, by the way. And the main thing is that still with the phone, and we love the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, the thing is that you can still, I mean, this is in many ways a computer generated image when you work with those mobile phones. And with that camera, it feels different because it's an APS-C sensor, and depth of field is depth of field. It's not being it's not a computerized illusion or whatever it is. Yeah, and the other thing is, because we were a little bit late to the party when it comes to making a review, I decided to spit a little bit of blood and actually attach an anamorphic adapter to the camera itself. And when I say, why not spitting blood? I mean, of course, we can always find the easy way. But first of all, when you work with an anamorphic adapter, you have to attach it to this fixed lens. And even this is not always so easy, because if you look carefully, there is there's only an inner thread on the lens in order to attach anything, if you need an additional ND filter or any other filter. And here we had to order it, and it happened. We ordered in Amazon, never came. It was kind of lost on the way. So Florian was kind enough to print it. So we did a 3D print of the bridge between the lens and the adapter. For that video, I used it almost like an ancient. It looks like for so old, like from SLR Magic. They have a 1.33 times anamorphic squeeze adapter.
And I saw some people comment that, I remember that other video that you did ages ago with the same adapter.
Yeah, that's what we have here. And actually for a 16:9 sensor, 133 still goes very well. And that was the idea behind it. So to give just again aesthetic wise, to see if we can get a bit of a different look. And this camera is limited, like I think it's 200 megabit per second. That's the maximum data rate that it can sustain. And I was also curious to see how good you can preserve the image. I shot it with f-log2 and later color graded with Film AI, which we also covered last week. And I think the picture is holding quite well. And just one last word about the review, because in the mini documentary, I was featuring Alp. Alp is a very nice man, originally from Turkey, lives here in Vienna. And, he's an architect, so that's his day job. But what he's also doing, he's hosting people at home for dinner. So if you are a tourist,
Random people.
I mean, it's like it's crazy and nice at the same time. Yeah, opening his home, he's cooking Middle Eastern food, which is very tasty, and so that's what he does. And I covered random mish people that come. Like there's a couple there. They really ordered or reserved the evening together with him. And then he asks some other friends to come. So there's always a bit more to talk about. And some of the images I really like. They look, kind of, what is cinematic in many ways. But of course, I couldn't really add lights, and I couldn't interrupt the atmosphere that he wanted to create at home. So I was really riding on what there was without.
I think this shot is missing the There was one shot which
really not discreased.
yeah,
That's interesting. Good to see. Okay, if you spot the shot, don't tell it what second.
you don't get anything.
You don't get anything. Very interesting.
But nobody commented on this yet. So
No, maybe they thought it's another feature. Okay, good.
Okay, so you basically were the fly on the wall, but you, I guess, were very able to move fast because of the tiny camera and the small lens, no?
Yeah, that's the big advantage of those mirrorless cameras. That's why one of the reasons we both really love working with them. Long time ago, I gave up on how I look in the field. It's in the sense of coming with a big camera. Do I look professional? Who cares?
Well, for me, it's yes, I like working with them. It's faster, but I don't really understand why do I need a camera that is smaller than a X-T50? You know what I mean? Like, what does it matter? It's already a mirrorless. Like, even in between, like within the range of each one of those manufacturers, it's like, am I shooting with a mirrorless or a pro camera, which is a different body shape? That makes a difference. But if I'm already with a mirrorless, does it really make a difference if I'm, let's say, I mean, this camera, of course, is very small, but let's say the X-T50 that you were talking about. Does it matter? Does it make a difference if I shoot on an X-T5 or an X-T50? For me, I don't think so. It's like, what are you talking about? Like 50 grams difference, 100 grams? I don't know. It's like it's not interrupting me in any way. So that's confusing me a little bit.
Yeah, I think all things needs to be considered. And one of those things is, especially when you're traveling, and we are traveling quite a lot, if the quality is not suffering and the package, the camera, and let's say that the camera is the brain here, yeah, you can always make it bigger if you need to, but there's a certain size for the brain, and I would always go with the smaller camera. It's easy. It's so easy for me to move. It's part of my body. I don't, even in terms of dealing with sometimes with authorities, I feel incognito. I feel like I'm doing my job.
One thing that I'm missing from most of those cameras, and I think you can touch on this feature with this one, is simply built-in ND. And there's this problem that I always run into. Of course, I use a lot of variable ND on front of the lens, but they're polarizers, and you always end up at some point filming a screen or something, and then you can't really properly film the screen because it's a polarizer, and it either shows you black or so that's an issue. And this is a limitation where I'm sometimes like more tempted to use a small cinema camera like an FX6, which is really everything in one package, and I feel like I can more properly hold it.
The main difference is connectivity at the end. Between a bit of cinema, bigger cameras is the connectivity. Of course, it offers greater possibilities, like when you really need in a larger production. You touch the ND filter in this camera. The ND filter specifically in this camera is rather I don't want to say easy to achieve, but it's easier because it's a fixed focal length lens. But you're right about the ND filters, although today I think it is what it is, and I think we are kind of managing to work quite well with those filters. But I do have a feeling that within the near future, we might see development also here. Yeah, we already... I think it was last year, IBC, we awarded a company that actually manufacturing, a Swedish company that is manufacturing variable ND filters. And we know that they are in contact with various manufacturers. We can't say which manufacturer will be the first one to bite the bullet here and actually introduce some kind of game-changing feature. I mean, we are very much afraid of using this kind of word, the game-changing or phrase, yeah. But here, of course, it's going to be a desirable element. And when I talk about a desirable element, that means if you have an element in such a camera, that can really drive users from one brand to another.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I think it's one of the biggest assets that Sony has right now in the cinema cameras, that this is just a feature I love on the FX6, FX9. It's once you get used to this, it's very hard to not be used to it anymore when you go to another camera or brand. Also, auto ND, like automatic ND, just set your f-stop at 2.8, for example, and then just follow your subject from indoor to outdoor and keep exposure correct without changing the aperture by using automatic ND. That was a game changer for me. And that's something that I really always struggle with other cameras.
Actually,
but the company you were mentioning is LC Tech.
LC Tech from Sweden, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so Sony has a patent on this variable ND technology, the way they do it. I don't know the technical specifics. And LC Tech has another one. And LC Tech is independent, and they, of course, are free to sell this to any other company. So I as far as we know, Sony is not licensing their variable ND to any other manufacturer, but LC Tech very much intends to do so and was open about this.
Yeah.
And let's see. I mean, it will hopefully at some point show up in other manufacturers' cameras coming from them.
Yeah. I just want to mention that by the time that you will hear this podcast later today, we will be publishing an article featuring the Sony variable ND solution. There are 5 new videos that were just posted by Sony. Each one is touching another subject. Quite interesting. So we are kind of putting it all together in one article so you guys can see. And they explain it very
It's funny,
nice way.
I didn't know you. I considered adding this to the writer's tasks, but then I was like, maybe people know already about it. I didn't know it's 5 videos. I only saw one yesterday.
Yeah, they did quite a bad job in letting people know that it's one of 5. Because when you look at this, it looks like, okay, but they did a good job explaining, and I think it's
if there's one thing that this Sony solution suffers from is the fact that you still have to move in the ND. So it starts at a certain strength. And if anybody ever manages to, but I mean, that's actually, I asked this guy from LC Tech the question, if it will be possible to start at 0. He said no. If that's ever possible, because then we can lose the mechanical element that actually moves the filter in front of the lens. And that's exactly, as far as we know, what so far prevented mirrorless camera manufacturers to put that into their cameras, because the actual mechanism that is moving the filter in front of the sensor needs a lot of space, and it would make the camera bigger. But there's definitely a space for, if you think about cameras like, even like something, I'm just like the C70, for example. It's not a small camera, but it feels like a mixture between a mirrorless and a cinema camera. They market it as a cinema camera, but people love this camera because it's smaller than other cinema cameras. I think if you have something like this, almost like a mirrorless camera with a grip in terms of size, I'm sure it will theoretically should be possible to put something like this inside. So let's see.
Yeah, let's see.
And there was another limitation which I just want to mention to finish this subject. The Burano from Sony, their high-end cinema camera, is the first camera to combine sensor stabilization with ND. And that was also one argument we always heard. If we put in a filter, we cannot do IBIS. Now, apparently they solved this problem with the Burano. So I'm really looking forward also for a Sony camera, maybe in the future, that combines both in a much smaller package.
And up until then, when we have this solution, I really enjoy flying in aeroplanes, modern aeroplanes that have those windows and a little switch when you can just touch the window and it will dim into dark. And that always reminds me that ND filter is actually also possible high and above. That's always reminds me.
And like these old luxury cars also that had this when you don't want to talk to the driver, like. But I thought I only know this from movies. You know this from your luxury flights, whatever.
Yeah, luxury.
One other camera that's very similar to the X100VI in a way, in the size, I think, is the newly announced Panasonic LUMIX S9. Yeah. That was announced yesterday. Amazing package, I think. It comes in different colors. I think there's a red one, a blue one, and I think a green one. It's a full frame camera in a very small size with L mount, I guess.
Yeah, it's an L mount. One of the colors actually comes in a CineD color, in a CineD red color.
So you can put the sticker on here. That'd be nice.
It can shoot up to 6K and even open gate. I think Panasonic really did. There is a whole variety of resolutions, like in any other modern camera, resolutions and frame rates. Think what we should really look at is the bit depth and color sampling. So in some resolutions it will be limited for 4:0, and only where are we now? Where is this now? I want to be accurate here. Of course, with some of them it's going to be 4:2 and 10-bit versus 8-bit. So you really have to look into the article itself and see what can be done with what resolution. But all in all, it's a very nice small package, also not so expensive. The only thing for me, again, it's a matter of usability, and we hear it more and more from manufacturers. There is no EVF in this camera. It's lacking. And for me, it's so difficult to work without an EVF. And when we talk to manufacturers about EVF in general, and it doesn't matter if it's Sony, Canon, or even Panasonic, we hear that they are studying and they are running their own questionnaires and so on. And actually, they always come up and say that the younger generation don't really work with EVF. So, guys, I personally need your support. Really, I want to see EVF in cameras. But it will be very interesting to hear your opinion. Do you think that EVF should be integrated in a camera, or just be a separated item that if you want to just purchase, at least hopefully the manufacturer will give us the possibility to purchase external EVFs. But it will be really interesting to hear your opinion. Me personally, working with a camera without an EVF is very difficult. Nino?
I share your frustration a little bit. I mean, I use both. I know you rely much more on it because, of course, you also need the glasses if you use the screen. But I also like to use a EVF, especially when I'm like really detail composing, in the sense that I want to be sure that I'm getting everything and I'm not missing anything. And it's also always, especially on those small cameras, an added point of contact with your body in terms of stabilization.
Absolutely.
Which, like the old rule, shoulder camera as well, like the more points of contact you have with your body on a camera, the more stable the image will be. Now, of course, maybe this matters less with a S9, which has a built-in IBIS, which is amazing.
Great. I mean,
because Panasonic,
in general,
exactly. Like I shot a lot on the S5 II for a documentary lately with these anamorphic lenses, and of course they don't have stabilization, but I ended up using only that camera for a lot of the shots because it's so good in stabilization. But in general, that's what I hear, like whenever we go to events and you talk to younger creators and filmmakers, they don't use EVFs. Like they don't even miss it because they don't have it on their cameras. And it's also something that I think when Sony announced the FX3, and then later the FX30, but especially the FX3, which is technically a copy of the A7S3. It's the same guts, right? It's the same sensor, it's the same processor, same everything inside, minus the EVF, but with a better, more rugged housing for cinema. But they lost the EVF. And we were like, why? But it seems like it's a very successful camera. The majority of people does not seem to miss it. So that's the unfortunate truth. I would also like to see an EVF. And like you said, like we don't even have an option. Like we don't even have a removable EVF on the Smart Hot Shoe, which technically I think should be no problem if they wanted to do it. Like an EVF that can travel with you from camera to camera that is not too big. And there is certainly a total lack of EVFs in the market that can be used with various cameras, right?
Yeah.
We have people are still using the Zacuto Gratical, which is not, it's quite an old product now.
But let's see, maybe the Blackmagic EVF, it all depends on how the USB within the camera is transmitting the information.
I can already tell you,
like
I know you have
display.
high hopes for this, but I investigated a little bit and there's almost no camera in the market that actually outputs image through USB. There is data through USB, but that cannot be used. So
it's not like a display port. It doesn't.
It is. Well, that's what Blackmagic is using on.
No, I know, but other cameras
they
obviously
don't do this. So they only output through micro or normal HDMI usually, and the camera, like the EVF from Blackmagic, does not understand this, unfortunately. Yeah. There is one from Kinefinity that we reported about at IBC, which is universal, but it's SDI only. That's another problem. So you will need to use a converter. If they made an HDMI version, we would have a modern.
Yeah.
But still, anyway, a small one, like a tiny one that uses the OLED from whatever, even if it's someone from Sony that only works on other Sony cameras, or from Panasonic, it doesn't matter. We want an EVF.
Just before closing this subject of camera, I think it's also important to say that specific Lumix, the S9, in terms of size, it's very similar to the FUJIFILM X100VI.
Yeah.
So, of course, it takes a lot of time to develop cameras, but I really wonder if manufacturers in general are looking at the success of Fujifilm. And I really wonder if there will be maybe fixed lens on those cameras in the future, just to mimic the same success.
Well, I think it's amazing that basically you have the same size, but this is a removable lens, and it's full frame.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. Of course, the big difference is it is a similar size, but I think Fujifilm is targeting the rangefinder street photography crowd because, of course, with a built-in EVF and the fixed focal length, which is typical for those cameras. Whereas Panasonic probably wants just a tiny interchangeable lens camera.
Talking about lenses,
exactly. In order to stay small with a small camera, you need to use a small lens. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah. And they did announce a pancake lens, which is an 26mm f8 lens, so really slow lens, but something that is tiny. Yeah.
So the purpose here is actually very interesting. Instead of having a body cap, meaning this little black gray thing that you always put on the body to keep the sensor clean, instead of that, why not to put that pancake lens? Again, it's all manual lens, no autofocus, nothing. But with f8, I think everything is going to be anyway kind of sharp. So this is a nice idea and a nice attempt to let you have the S9, keep it small with like a fixed focal length lens, wide enough, I would say.
Well, you won't need to focus a lot anyway with f8.
Exactly. So
and it's like, it says pinhole style because it's literally like a pinhole camera, right? Yeah. Like the shoe boxes we made in school where you put in a little hole and then the photo paper that's exactly how it works. It's like,
that's right. So you can buy the camera itself. You can buy it just body only, or they have a kit lens. But I don't think there's a kit with that new lens. But that would be, of course, interesting.
I guess it's a nice add-on. I can't see people using this because if you use this, you will essentially have what you have on your phone. Because it's 26mm, very similar to the standard lens on most smartphones, and f8 will actually lose most of the shallow depth of field, so it will look very similar to what you can do with a phone. This camera in general, I think they did a good job at kind of integrating it with a smartphone. Talking about that, they have
with the app, you mean?
They have a very good app, I think, which is something that traditionally I think Japanese manufacturers had to learn a lot about, and finally they are taking apps seriously, and you can do a lot of cropping and different modifications of the image directly. I think it's not. It's been really time because I think they are not competing with other camera manufacturers. They're competing on these cameras. They're competing with phone manufacturers that have all the abilities of apps in the phones. So I was just like, I'm still surprised that remember the Zeiss, what was it called? This Zeiss camera? XZ1 or ZX, whatever. They had a camera.
Yeah, there was
and it used Android.
Yeah.
And it kind of was discontinued, unfortunately. But I think the concept itself was great because Android is made by Google, but it's open source. So everybody who wants to can use that on their products. And we see Android on a lot of other things other than smartphones as the operating system. And of course, it gives you the ability to make apps and custom apps or even available apps for smartphones to use on a camera.
ZX1.
Yeah. So that, and unfortunately, it wasn't successful. There was also, remember the Samsung camera before, which had a similar concept. And for some reason, this never really became successful, but I still think it's because nobody has executed it in the right way. If any of those big camera manufacturers would just make a little experiment camera and, kind of with a saying in German, which is like jump over your own shadow, like kind of like be open enough to let another software operate your camera, but then have all the abilities that you now still have to work with on a separate app in your phone. So you still have to connect two devices with each other. Why not have those functions inside the camera? Why not have the ability to crop every photo inside the camera, maybe even shoot in log and then attach all those film simulations in camera and then either share it with your phone or even if it's Wi-Fi enabled, share it directly to social media.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. And we have now eSIMs, right? Why don't have cameras eSIMs? You can put an eSIM in a camera and just have data-only connection and go directly to Instagram with those things. That for me would be the total success for a camera. If you ditch the smartphone. Everybody's running after the smartphone because it's so successful. But what if you cut out the smartphone? You make a camera that doesn't need the smartphone. I think there's a real possibility there. But you need people to develop software, but you can't base it on Android. So
there's one more manufacturer. This is a Chinese manufacturer, and we covered it long time ago. But obviously, they still keep coming up with new versions. This is Yongnuo. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And the latest version was this YN4552. Very sexy name.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Micro Four Third camera. We covered it. I think I saw it first in Japan in one of the exhibitions. And they're obviously still producing Android-based cameras.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I think it's so obvious, and I don't understand why they make everything so complicated. Like sometimes, like even if it's just like make a side project, try it out. And we've seen for many side projects in our industry that became massively successful.
Yeah, maybe the market is not ready yet. You never know. Obviously, that's not a priority.
I think it's more than ready. I think it's because we see that they lose so much market share to just smartphone manufacturers. And of course, they are trying to salvage it by making models that are smaller and more, but in the end, it's all about usability. It's all about the user interface. And if you can cut out one device, I think, it could be.
But we are talking about cameras. So shall we summarize the camera topics of today by mentioning the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K, because this camera just got a massive discount. It's like 40% discount.
Yep.
40% Why, discount. What's going on? We never saw something like this. I mean, this camera from $2,600 went all the way down to $1,575. This is a huge discount. And it's a global discount, yeah?
So, first of all, it's important to point out that it's very confusing how Blackmagic names their cameras. So this is the full frame 6K camera, because they had the original 6K, which was, I think, Super 35.
Can be.
And then there was the Pro version, which had NDs. Now this one is the full frame, which doesn't have NDs, but has an L mount. So it's actually a later model, like a newer model. Now they announced the Pixies, which is a 6K, probably the same sensor that is in here, but in a new body shape. So it looks like they're trying to clear stock in a way. It looks like they really want to move on to the new body shape, which is the Pixies, which everybody has been asking about, the box camera from Blackmagic. Main point of criticism is, of course, that it still uses the same sensor, which had so-so results for people. But it is a very popular camera, and it is an amazing price now, 40% off this as a global thing. Like it's not only limited for one dealer or whatever. You can get this. You should be able to get this from anywhere. Of course, also our site sponsors, B&H and CVP, which we will always appreciate if people use, because you will not pay a dime more, and we get a tiny amount of commission on those sales. But yeah, it is impressive that they dropped it by 40%. To me, I don't know what you think, but it looks like that camera will probably be discontinued.
I don't think that this shape in general is really, as a shape, is very desirable by people. I think they really want either a mirrorless size or box, and the new Blackmagic Pixie is already answering this thing. So,
well, we remember when this was announced, it was already at a point where people were really kind of done with that form factor, because that was the biggest point of criticism. I mean, the pocket camera in general has been hugely successful. I think it's opened up a whole world of filmmaking for a lot of, especially young filmmakers who are starting out, because of what you get in the package, which is really raw recording, and a lot of those models still do ProRes. I think this one only does Blackmagic RAW. Something you didn't have at the time with any other manufacturer in body, just to have that bit depth. But people were fed up with the form factor, I guess. But it's still an amazing camera. I mean, it's still,
and now at a very competitive
price. Last camera topic before we move on to
review. Back to reviews,
is something weird we reported about. So Canon has been quiet about new cameras for
months now,
for a long time, and people are asking themselves, when is the finally next Canon camera coming? And they surprised us by announcing.
Well, before the surprise, we have to be transparent, say that the R1 is coming. Now there was an official announcement, so that's good to know.
But there's no specifics about the camera yet.
This was just a development announcement, but they actually came out with an actual PowerShot golf camera. So
why do we report about a golf camera?
In all honesty, and actually people really asked us, what are happening to you guys? Are you becoming a golf site? No. I think for me personally, it was important to report about that camera because it shows some innovation. It shows some thinking out of the box. It doesn't matter now if we have nothing to do with golf. We're still young. We have nothing to do with golf. But I think it was important to see that Canon is trying to think out of the box. And the idea of featuring this camera is, hopefully, if there is some interest in that one, we really hope that Canon will continue to push the envelope with out-of-the-box thinking with cameras or products that are related to our industry, like our filmmaking industry. So maybe we are a little bit naive here, but that was the intention of exposing that specific camera.
Well, I think we very often are not even aware how much of the business of those big companies is actually not the filmmaking or photography industry. And if you look at giants like Panasonic, Canon, Sony,
FUJIFILM,
they have so many, they have all their toes in so many other
medical
ponds,
printers,
and
whatever.
And of course, this is not really connected to our industry, but it's a camera. And it's just interesting that things are happening in that field.
I have to say, this is a small anecdote, and the guys that we are working with, our team members, are all filmmakers, all of them. Nobody's a writer per se. They're all filmmakers who are now working with us together. One of them, when we put the task to write about that new camera, he's a young guy, he's playing golf, and he was actually so excited about that camera. So
Jose?
I don't want to name names.
Well, he wrote the articles.
Yeah, Jose. But
I think it's a wrong preconception that golf is for old people. There's a lot of young people playing golf, but yeah.
Okay, so never too late for me to start. But I'm just saying, it did excite one of our team members, and it's I guess important because that means that obviously Canon, the people whom they are targeting, they might accept this camera.
Well, yeah, just because we know where. I also remember a talk we had years ago with somebody working for a big tripod manufacturer who told us that he's actually about to head to China for a bird watching show, and because he sold, but he sold the big cinema tripods, the really expensive ones. They sold more to bird watchers than they did to actual filmmakers.
That's a
but it's still but still.
No. What I'm saying is that we are trying to talk over and over again to some manufacturers and say, release a camera which is targeted branded, aimed to bird watchers. Many of them are people who have the time, they have the money, and they want an equipment. Yeah, and to do bird watching with full frame cameras is not always the best way, because if you have a smaller sensor, and that means you can really reach into a even better focal length with a smaller equipment. But we can only kind of advise. We are not manufacturing a camera yet, so yeah, that's how it is.
But we know that the wildlife filmmaking world, this is why the RED cameras are very popular there, because they do crop once you change frame rates. So that's actually a downside for a lot of other applications, but it's great for wildlife.
Yeah.
So
but in general, I think if you're using a Micro Four Third sensor for bird watching, that's almost like the perfect sensor size for that task.
All right, let's move on to another review. So Alex, who sits here behind the screens and is bored by us talking about various things, I hope not, but he did a nice review of the DaVinci, well, actually a first look, I would say, of the DaVinci Resolve micro color panel that was announced during IBC. What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's a great little package. I actually have it here, just to show to the camera, and it's a nice upgrade from the older one, because it adds a lot of buttons. There was a lot of talk about buttons in the first impressions that many people have sort of replaced with an Elgato Stream Deck. So the main difference between the mini version and the micro version was that the screens were missing at the top, but a lot of buttons were missing. And so a lot of people replaced those with the Stream Deck. I also work like this. And now basically they've made that obsolete by adding all those buttons that we had to replace with the Stream Deck to this new version. It's smaller, it's lighter. It feels a bit, the materials are not as premium as on the older model, but I think for many people this will be a very good solution. It's portable, it's got a little groove at the top to put your iPad Pro in. So yeah, overall, and of course the price is very competitive. It's around $500, so I think it's a very good deal.
So who are the target audience for this?
It's I think it's people starting, basically, because the low price is of course great. So if you're starting off with color grading, it's a low threshold for you, to get started. And also, of course, people on the go who grading on the iPad, who are grading on set or on the go. I think it's a very good. You can put the iPad Pro and this thing in a backpack, and you're good to go.
You're talking about grading in DaVinci on iPad, or using DaVinci, like using the iPad as an additional monitor?
That's grading on the iPad, yeah. So you have DaVinci on the iPad, you put it in there, and you can start grading straight away. Because the iPad version of DaVinci has got the edit page and the color page, so you can pretty much get started.
Very cool. So that video is on our site. Thank you, Alex. It's $500, $510 or 450 euros, and it's a lot smaller than the predecessor. Are the buttons less clicky?
They are less clicky. They travel a bit. Lighter, as in the older version. So it's overall it's a bit more plasticky, yeah. But I think with the added functions, the added functionalities, they are well worth the investment.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. And, for everybody who's interested in learning more about DaVinci in general, on our education platform, MZ, we have a whole range of really, really detailed DaVinci courses, because we know DaVinci is a very powerful piece of software, but it's overwhelming for a lot of people when you get started. So we have a beginner's guide to DaVinci Resolve 18.5, which of course will also work for 19. We'll probably do an update of the new lessons there. It's a 6-hour course, and it goes really into detail. It's part of the MZ Pro subscription. You can watch 55 plus courses, and I don't know how many hundreds of hours of courses, and like 1,000 different lessons from different courses. And we have various courses on DaVinci Resolve. Ollie Kensington, who's like Alex, a Blackmagic design, certified instructor. has a whole range of DaVinci courses. So we have advanced editing with DaVinci Resolve, color correction, definite guide, mastering color, directing color. So it's a lot of stuff on DaVinci if you really want to dive into DaVinci. Just a little ad break here. But it's a really, really good course, and it taught me a lot about DaVinci, honestly. Okay, moving on. What's next? We have
the maybe MovMax. The Blade Arm.
So the MovMax. Now, that's what is it? It's a absorber system for a car, like a car mount, which we've seen, like for example, from Tilta with the Hydra system, which I reviewed a couple of years ago.
But this is very compact. That meant for devices between like 150 grams to 500 grams. I think it's safe to say that the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, the Insta360 and GoPro Pro users can easily use this. And there was so much interest in this product. We can see by the amount of people who are actually read the article. So, and it's very cheap. It's like $150 for a device that looks good, probably working quite well. And you know what? It's very functional, and it looks, the construction of it looks, may I say, genius in the sense it looks made very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand why people are so interested in it. It's kind of spooky to put a big camera package or any larger camera package on a car. Like even though, like I tested this, it would not be something that I would use on an ordinary shoot just to get an additional angle. It's something that you plan for and you do like today we're doing the car-to-car shots kind of, but it's not something you would do like as an extra shot for a documentary or a small commercial, I think, because it's something you need to plan for, and you also need permissions for. You can't just drive. I mean, also with this, but you can't just drive on normal streets.
With this, I don't know.
I don't know. Probably much easier to get a permission for this. But even if you do this on off roads where there's not a lot of traffic, of course, this is something you can just put on, and it's very easy. You put a pocket on there, Osmo Pocket. Or even, it's up to 500 grams. So I think you can use very light camera packages.
Maybe the S9, the new Panasonic S9. I don't know. We have to check. But I think this really falls into this category like drones. It's enough to have one or two shots.
It's like the DJI Mini drones.
And you elevate your productions all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and we see it in the example shots actually, because very often I think you don't realize that this is a small camera when you see the shots, right? What do you need? Usually it's a wide angle shot.
That's right.
And a wide angle means usually not a lot of shallow depth of field. So you can use something with a small sensor. So I think, I agree. It's genius. We should try and review this. I think it's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that was a popular article. We'll put the link in the show notes, like all the others. Then Laowa came out with two more Cine zooms under their OOOM brand. Now years ago, they announced the OOOM 25-100, which is a very wide range zoom lens for PL mount, which was their first cinema zoom actually. And now they announced two more focal lengths. Interestingly, one is for Micro Four Thirds and one is Super 35 with a PL mount. So those are not complementary. They're either one or the other, depending on the camera system you use. It's a 14 to 60 T2.9 for Micro Four Thirds. That's a kind of typical focal range we see on those kit zooms for Micro Four Thirds because of the 2x crop factor, right? It's similar to the Panasonic. I don't know if it's
14
a kit.
is good. 14 millimeter on a Micro Four Thirds.
It's like 28.
Yeah, but that's a beginning of a good wide angle.
Probably not wide enough to replace a wide angle, but yeah. But it's a good range, and I think it's nice to still see Micro Four Thirds getting some love, which is like
sure. And also the other lens, the Super 35, the 20 to 85 millimeter.
That's a good range.
A good range, and it's, I would say, a competitive price, almost to $2,000 US for a Cine lens. Yeah, Laowa is doing a lot. I mean, they always look for this kind of niche and do things a little bit different. I think Mr. Lee, the person behind the company, is very motivated to do some stuff. Yeah.
I mean, they used to, when they started, we saw especially those wide angles that set them apart, and they still do. I think like some of their wide angles I love using them because they're just amazingly straight and no barrier distortion and anything like that. And then they moved into more traditional lenses as well, I guess.
Traditional and anamorphic and small anamorphics. I mean, I think currently, if you are in the filmmaking business, I think everybody knows Laowa. And don't forget the one that you actually reviewed. You were one of the first one to review the snorkel lens. I think that's one of their most popular ever lens. Yeah, nobody at that time.
That's it's still an amazing lens, and I see this. It's part of so many filmmakers' kits now, even the high end, because there are other lenses in this field, but not so many that actually give you a wide angle macro snorkel with 24 millimeter. You can get just very unique shots. I mean, if you shoot a macro close up, like a macro shot with a 24 millimeter, it just shows you the environment because the problem with traditional macro lenses, which are usually 100 millimeter or something like that, or even more, they completely isolate the subject from the background. So you really have you see an insect and you don't see anything about his surroundings. But with this lens, you can go up really close to a bee or whatever. I think I did the review on bees and a beehive, and you can literally see everything around it, and it's just a very unique
all the other bees
kind of shots. Yeah, it's it's very hard to explain. And of course, the shape, because it's so thin and long, you can really go into a lot of places where you're simply not able to do this.
Maybe we should pay a visit and actually see how the factory is at some point. That would be interesting.
That'd be very great. Yeah. No, very interesting company, and I think very interesting choice of products that they are making, which sets them apart. All right, moving on. We had a new Portkeys monitor, which is interesting because it's not tiny, like it's 7-inch, and it's only $99. I think it's $99.
Wow.
I think it's the cheapest. I don't know. I'm not aware of any other 7-inch monitor for $99. At least from
a brand name.
Exactly. And I think Portkeys is a recognized brand in the monitors business. I always like the monitors for their features. I mean, they always had all the features you need. Everything you can think of that is sometimes missing from other brands that are offering, competitively priced or, more affordable monitors.
So why is this one so affordable?
Well, it's only 720p resolution, which is, of course, not a lot, especially if you look at the fact that it's 7-inch, so it's not small. But it still might be enough. Sometimes you just want this extra monitor to even, I think if it's a monitor that you give to your director or have something on top of your camera that you're not you know how it is, if you film for somebody and you use a small camera, you have this tiny monitor, everybody's going to be over your shoulder and looking at it, and it's difficult. I think for this purpose, it's more, maybe not perfect to full focus with a 720p monitor. Of course, you can always punch in and do the magnification thing, but I think it's $100. So there's not a lot of not a lot of mistakes you can make with this.
So I think it's important to say the resolution is 720.
Yeah,
but it can take input up to 4K. I mean, you can feed it.
So you can punch in.
Yeah, that's right. So that's one thing. And I think when it comes to functionality in general, it has peaking, anamorphic discrete, exposure assist tools, grids, vertical and horizontal image flip,
full size HDMI.
That's right. So there is a lot of functionality for the price.
Yeah.
So if the resolution itself, as you said, that more like an aid, like a tool to aid to help you or your director while filming, this is
it's a bit of a no-brainer actually.
That's right.
Very good price. Good. So that's just announced, not a review, just a news report. So we didn't touch this yet. Another thing that we just reported about, the VoxBox Air. Now, I use the original VoxBox quite a lot, which is a really, really cool device. Some people might know the iDirect. There's not a lot of companies making those, but basically those things are made, it's mirror boxes, so it's purely mechanical, and it allows an interviewee to look straight into the face of the interviewer who's sitting next to the camera. We all know the typical setup of interviews where, like you're kind of like doing this, where you're like talking to the person sitting next to the camera, but not straight to the camera, because we want people to actually have a connection with the interviewer. It's very hard for people who are not used to presenting, like moderators or actors, to talk straight to an inanimate object like a lens, and then still feel like they're engaged with the audience, because essentially I'm just looking at a black hole. For average people, this is almost impossible. And what will happen if you ask them to do that is that usually their eyes will wander around. It will wander to the camera person. It will wander to the interview. It's very hard for them. It sounds banal, but it's really hard.
So what is the
solution
here?
is, with these devices, both the iDirect and the VoxBox, it's a mirror box that's put in front of the lens, and it actually, you see it in this image. So there's a camera behind this mirror where you see her face, and this is the interviewer, right? So this is what the interviewee would see. So the interviewee here is looking straight at the person's face, but in reality, they are looking at the camera, which is behind this semi-translucent mirror. And there's another mirror here on the right-hand side, which is actually, getting that image, kind of like that reflection from the interviewer. So you have the illusion to look at the interviewer directly. And this is, of course, much easier for people. But in reality, they will look down the lens, which is great. Now,
what's the difference between what you used and this is the light version?
Well, the thing with the original VoxBox is it's big. I mean, it's like it comes in a pelly case, and you cannot, like if you want to stay small, you need a car to transport it. It's like a big pelly case, and it's not collapsible. So it's basically a couple mirrors in a box, and you can either mount it in front of your camera on 15mm rods, or I always mounted it actually on a separate tripod, because I just found it easier to move in and out, because you just use it for this and then you move it away and then you get your B-roll with the same camera. But it's big. And this one, the Air, is actually collapsible. So you see it here. Where's the video? Yeah, so wait a second. Yeah, so you see it here in the background. It's actually, it's actually collapsing. So you can fold it, and then in the end it works like the normal VoxBox. It also looks very similar. I think they announced this, I guess we didn't report about it, but it was announced last year, and now it's finally shipping. And yeah, it's a cool system. It's not very cheap. I think this is a very small company from the UK making it. It's around $1,500, I think.
But if you're making a lot of interviews, and
exactly.
you know that there are some companies that's their specialty, medical interviews and whatever. Yeah,
I think it's well worth it, because it lifts your production, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, getting people to look down the lens. But then what they end up doing is putting the interviewer behind the camera, and it's just like peeking out behind the camera. It's always a compromise. With this thing, I think it works really well. It's €1,500 and should be available in June. It's smart that they made a version which is now folding up into a small package, of course. I'm surprised that this is, that there are not more manufacturers making something like this. It's a niche for sure, but I think it's something that a lot of filmmakers are simply not aware of, that it's available.
I think manufacturers, not that I want to point at any manufacturer, but maybe they're not even aware of the issue.
Yeah, maybe. But it's a really cool solution. And I think the VoxBox in general is a much better solution than the iDirect. The iDirect has been there for a long time, also from, I think, a British company, if I'm not mistaken. Also very expensive and very cumbersome to put up. Like really, like you need time to set it up, and it takes an effort, and it's big. And it's because it's, there's not been a lot of innovation in that space. So it's nice to see something like another company making something like this. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Well, Then one or two more topics. Sony announced a new Xperia 6 phone, which is it's not the X100VI from Fuji. It's the Xperia 6 from Sony. Why do we talk about a phone? Of course, because of the camera. Now, what do you think about Xperia phones in general?
I have to say that we were very engaged at the beginning of those mobile phones / cameras. Yeah, and we worked quite close with Sony, also advising in some functionalities. And at some point, we kind of drifted away because, in all honesty, I'm a bit struggling to understand the direction of Sony with the Xperia, with the Xperia in general, with the line, yeah, especially when it comes to, let's say, professional tools. They have to compete Apple. Apple is the de facto leader here.
And Samsung.
No, I'm talking about filming. Like for our filming community, I would say that maybe Apple is the one who, and it always feels as if Sony is kind of chasing Apple in some ways in terms of functionality, and also it always feels as if there is no really direction, meaning it feels to me nobody is really sitting in the higher management because it takes a lot of, I guess, funds and time to come up with functionality and product, and just to be very clear, what do we want to achieve with this product? Do we want to seriously combat Apple here and offer to filmmakers, because at the end, of course, we are just a small niche here. So if you want a phone for users, this is one thing, and I'm not so sure that Sony is doing really great because I don't see so many people using Xperias. But on the other hand, if you want to target the filmmaking community, the photographers and so on, then you have to be very clear with what you want to offer. And this is it's a good attempt to move forward with showing additional optical lenses and so on. But it feels like not like 100% refined yet, because maybe there's some technical limitations, or maybe Sony doesn't really want to combat their own alpha cameras. I don't know, whatever the decision. But I'll be very, very curious to know in terms of sales, how those phones are doing. Because I can see on one hand, if you look at previous announcements of the Xperia phone, there's a lot of engagement. People are watching the videos made by Sony. Hundreds of thousands are looking at what Sony is doing. But on the other hand, when it comes to sales, I'm not so sure.
I don't know. Did you see this article on Bloomberg? It was like a couple of weeks ago. So apparently, it's difficult for Sony right now in this market because they did announce sale numbers and they went down. So,
for how long? For how long do you think a company? Because we know what happened to the Sony when they used to do laptops. Yeah, they had a whole series of laptops. I can't even remember the name. What was the name of the laptops?
I
forgot
also.
now. Yeah. So they had this, and then at some point, because it was not profitable, they just ditched it and moved on. And I really, really wonder, like a year or 2 years from now, because it's money. Again, it's money, it's resources, it's people.
Well, some parts of Sony are still in this mindset where they want to do everything, right? I mean, they're giant. They're making most of the sensors in smartphones in general are made by Sony. So I guess they have the technology and they're like, why don't we make our own phone? But of course, I mean, they might not specifically need to develop those sensors for their phones because they already make them for other manufacturers. But yeah, it's a valid question. And of course, I mean, the funny thing is that Sony is simply not a brand in the smartphone market.
Yeah, and it's a business. A business needs to earn money.
Yeah.
And if the business doesn't earn money, then it's doomed.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to see.
And it's a shame because, of course, I mean, the only reason why you would buy a new phone these days in most cases is actually the camera. And they have great hardware. I mean, this one actually has a zoom lens built in, like an optical zoom lens, which, something we still don't have from Apple. But, the photo and the whole, you see the whole introductory video is only about the camera. Like they call the whole video introducing the Xperia 1.6 Pro level camera with power. So basically, like at the end, they talk a little bit about other stuff, but most of the beginning is just about how good the camera is, essentially.
And then you have to judge the bottom line. Will I buy this mobile phone instead of an Apple?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's either you're on iOS or you're on Android.
So
and if you're
Android,
if you're on Android, the question is more like, will I buy this or a Samsung
or a Google phone, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's a very good question. But let's see. I mean, the camera seems to be quite good. I saw some reviews online, very convincing. But is that enough for people to convert to a Sony phone? We don't know.
Yeah.
Good. I think we can round it off by mentioning the last week's educational post, which talked about the filmmaker's voice and how to master the narrative perspective. And it's all about from which perspective do you tell a story. So Masha, our writer who deals with educational topics and AI topics, she's really diving into that subject and bringing some classical examples that it's all about, where is the view coming from? Is it objective or is it subjective? And how does that change your story? There's a lot to learn here. There's a lot that filmmakers can, kind of manipulate the audience's perception of something by changing the perspective from which a story is told. And that, of course, also affects the camera work. So that is a really cool article that I recommend everybody to read on that, and of course touches also on some subjects that are in much more detail covered in some MZ courses. Okay, I think that's enough for today.
I think so. Yeah.
That was a very packed episode, I think.
Yeah.
And guys, if you are listening to this podcast, please rate it on YouTube. Please rate it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are listening or subscribe to. We appreciate it. We're still relatively new to the podcasting space. We've only been doing this for 3 months, but it's a lot of fun. And see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
guys.
Johnny.
Thank you very much. See you soon.